I don't think that we are in emerging markets. I think that I'm leading emerging market and Israel. So I try to separate it because I feel like we're not there in terms of emerging markets because we're doing crazy things around technology. Also the positioning. If someone were able and accepted to be part of Google for Startup, they have a very strong brand that behind them that's also helping them, with attracting customers and investors and so on. The other thing, we have the CEO circle that we do every month. They come up with a specific challenge that each time a different founder is bringing. And then there will be a group, like a circle of CEOs that helping them, and we have a structure for that, really help them thinking about asking them lots of questions, the CEO. And after they gather the information, each person will give them their point of view from their experience. So this is, a very useful structure of activity that's been very helpful for them.
Yuval Passov, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Great to be here.
I know, it's funny. You're saying great to be here, but you're hosting me on my channel, IsraelTech, that I'm hosting. So you're running up your head up Google for Startups. But specifically, you said for emerging markets?
Yeah.
I feel like that's like, how is that different than, let's say, if you were Google for Startups at, let's say, another country that wasn't an emerging market, or Google for Startups only for emerging markets?
So emerging markets include Israel, Middle East, and Africa. And I think that the thing that it's emerging markets, it means that we have so many different countries, and it's not just EU or North America. So we have different challenges, different stages, and big problems in the same time that you have a lot of population. So the idea is like, how do you solve big problems with many, many technologies that are, we all talk about AI. And I think that this is a big opportunity. So I think that this is why it's a unique position to be in. And especially now, I feel like Africa specifically is one of the interesting places. We've been saying that for a long time, but definitely now with the ability to develop very quickly the initial product, it's a great opportunity to solve big problems. If it's education, if it's health, if it's infrastructure, GovTech. So a great opportunity for many startups, both from Israel and from around the world.
What I found awesome about Africa is that because it has so little infrastructure and setup, that you get to leapfrog so much old technologies, and they're immediately brought up like into the future. So you can see that in many emerging markets too, where the airports are much nicer than airports of, let's say, New York, LA, whatever, because they're brand new and they're nicer. Mm-hmm. The transportation that's now built can have in mind autonomous driving, right? And kind of the needs of our transportation of the day, not, let's say, what might have been built even 100 plus years ago, well before technology, or when cars were just kind of started to get adapted at a greater scale. So I think that's kind of one of the things that they have also, right? They've never had landlines. They're going straight to mobile cell phones. That's just not a thing. Yeah. And so the whole infrastructure, exactly. In a sense, they get to leap right into the future. They don't have all of this old technology they need to adapt, or even old regulations, and within the business, that the government provides. They can go straight to the future. They're actually going to have a unique advantage, especially Nigeria with their population boom. So how does it? Let's talk about Israel. Obviously, it's the name of the channel here, and that's where we are. Israel is considered an emerging market. How much longer do you think Israel will no longer be an emerging market? I feel we're stuck. Sometimes, I live in Israel. I feel like I'm in the most advanced country in the world, and I feel like I live in a third world shithole. It's so fascinating because just 20 years ago, we were a third world, basically. When does a nation stop being emerging?
So I don't think that we are in emerging markets. I think that, I'm leading emerging market and Israel. So I try to separate it because I feel like we're not there in terms of emerging markets because we're doing so many, crazy things around technology. So for me, as I told you before, we have 6 campuses around the world. 3 in Europe, and one of them is Israel. We have in Asia, and then we have in Latin America. But for us, this campus is the most active in terms of activity. Currently, we have over 30 founders, and I think that just following, as I mentioned, October 7, this place been packed, and I think that currently we have the highest numbers of founders, both female and male founders. And I think that it's part of the startup magic, the startup nation, and all the other words that we use to describe it. But I feel that this is this innovation is part of our blood, and you see here every day someone coming, and if it's post their experience in the reserves, that we see different examples. If it's people that were injured, just like different things that they use VR for rehabilitation, if it's cyber. But if it's like many other, we have cross verticals. We have fintech, and we have education, and we have we have health. So I think that the idea here is to incubate them, but really to create a community, because that's, as everyone know, founding a startup is a challenging thing, and you need to have this supportive community. So this is what we try to do, to create like a safe space for founders, that they can learn from each other, but also feel like they have a safe place that they can share their fears, their thoughts, their everyone is telling them it's not going to work. So hopefully here someone will tell them that it's not going to work, but also will give them the support that they really need.
So when the founders are here, I mean, how are you guys different, let's say, as an incubator than others? I mean, there are so many here in Israel.
So I don't feel that there is so many, because probably in the past there used to be a lot of accelerators, but I think that now I feel like there is just a handful of accelerator. But I don't see that as an accelerator, because startup here can join at any time. So it's not like a program that starts in January and ends in March. It's constantly we're looking for the best founders. They will come for 6 months on average. Usually it's after they raise their first check, pre-seed. And think about that we will give them everything they need to grow from like 2-3 people to 10 people and raise their seed money. So it's not a program, so anytime they can join as long as they pass the interviews. B, they have the best of Google, and in Google I go on one level up, so Alphabet, so they will have connection to Fitbit and Verily and DeepMind and Android and Google Clouds, so anything that they need. And when I say support, they will be able to talk to product manager, to UX expert, to strategy people. And I think that this is what's amazing when you have Google for Startup. It's connecting the big corporate, and you have very smart people with the founders. Usually it's very hard for a founder to get access to these experts. And by giving also the Googlers that have been here for a long time ability to work with very quick, agile startup, they also get the benefit. The startups, the founders also get the benefit. So we try to make this connection and make this useful for both sides. And then, of course, they will get the credit of the cloud, but also the positioning. So if someone were able and accepted to be part of Google for Startup, they have a very strong brand that behind them, that also helping them, with attracting customers and investors and so on and so on.
For a brief moment, let's talk about a really important topic for growth. Many Israeli tech companies are tasked with expanding in America. And as you know, one of the hardest things to do is recruiting. That is why IsraelTech is proud to bring you Hagesha Group, a trusted partner helping Israeli tech companies expand and recruit in the United States. Hagesha Group helps you quickly find top talent that fits culturally with your Israeli tech company. If you're looking for the best results, Hagesha Group is on the ground in the US to help you deliver no matter what. For more information on Hagesha Group, you can visit hageshagroup.com. And now, back to the show.
And so there's a mentorship involved, basically.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How available are these mentors? How do you decide who would be a right mentor? Or do you have kind of like, these are the certain kinds of mentors we need, maybe one for UI, UX, one for this, one for that, for developers, and then you go ahead and you find people to be those mentors?
So we have a pool of hundreds of mentors, and it's by geo, by position. So if they are now really early and they want to know about the UX UI, or go to market in specific vertical, or if they want to learn more about like the B2C and user acquisition, if it's and how they structure the website and build their content. So it really depends on which stage and what kind of expert they need, and we will look for the most relevant one. If it's an app and they want to know what will be the best way to launch their app, if it's soft launch, if it's which countries and so on. So we just take the relevant one for the pool, but it's kind of an art. You need to figure out what will work for them, what will bring the value, and this is a lot of the thing that my team is working on.
Tell me about the cross-pollination between the different founders at these startups. I feel sometimes when I'm trying to get work done, trying to build something, the last thing I need is interruptions and other people in my ear. Often they end up being a distraction, either positive or negative. A lot of naysayers, like you were saying earlier, but also those saying, oh, do this, do that. And there's so many ways that you can be distracted or pulled in a direction that might take you away from your main goal. What is it like? How are the founders able to support each other within, that reside here at Google for Startups?
So I think that, as you mentioned, it's not relevant for, it's not suitable for any founder, because as you said, some founders will want their one room, quiet time, work on the startup, and that's it. So probably would not be relevant what we're offering. But for the other startups, this community is super, super relevant and useful. For example, there will be a lot of questions about, the technical stuff. Who used this lawyer? Who opened their company in this country? Who has this, program that allow them to do, if it's, billing and so on and so on. So this is one thing. The other thing, we have the CEO circle that we do every month. And this is really, they come up with a specific challenge that each time a different founder is bringing. And then there will be a group, like a circle of CEOs, that helping them, and we have a structure for that, really help them thinking about asking them lots of questions, the CEO. And after they gather the information, each person will give them their point of view from their experience. So this is, a very useful structure of activity that's been very helpful for them. And I think that it's not something sometimes, when you go to an investor or to a board member, they have, they are not clean in terms of what behind that. I think that a lot of the time other CEOs really give you, much more useful advice than you would get from, if it's your spouse, your family, your investors, and so on.
So let's move on to kind of the conversation of October 7th. You started to talk about that since. How has the startup ecosystem, and also I guess what Google's doing here, changed since October 7th? I mean, we were invited to the IsraelTech mission that was here upstairs, and you guys were speaking and talking about all the amazing technology, and from veterans, they were learning from the battlefield that they were able to create startups out of. Very impressive, and maybe you can speak to that. How has the startup culture changed since and because of the war?
So I think that, at the beginning, many founders were in reserves, and we know that across the industry, even in Google, many of the employees were in reserves. But what was important for us, that a week after October 7, everyone was shocked, but a week after, we closed for the first week after October 7. But a week after, we opened our doors, and what we found out that many of the founder really found it useful, because a lot of them didn't have a shelter bomb, and was their safe space. And I think that since then, it's just getting we're just getting more and more founders that we had to change and have the cafe downstairs open for specifically for earlier stages. So it's just more on the ideation phase. So this is what we opened that, and then the other floors it's more for later stage. But overall, I feel like in terms of early stage, we just see more startups. And I think that stronger startups, more mature in terms of their stage of I don't want to found my own startup just because it's this is what everyone is doing. It's more because, in this challenging time that you see that it's harder to raise capital. I think that whoever now working on the journey, it's much they're much more mission driven. They thought about it before, and it's not that not just like an opportunistic approach. So this is why I think that, and you hear that from investors. Now it's the best time to invest in startups because they are really mission driven and they're doing amazing things that it's come from their very like
Their intestines, right?
Yeah.
There's a trend people are talking about bootstrapping more, or at least trying to delay fundraising as long as possible. Are you seeing that trend, or is it all just internet tech jabber?
So again, it's whatever I see from around the founders here. I see that now founders are able to get to their MVP with very little capital, and I think that this is what allows them to start kind of bootstrapping, and then able to show the investor in a later stage, much more mature product than what they used to do, a few years ago. And specifically now, it depends when this podcast will be, when this video will be live. But the development of AI tools to develop, if it's app, if it's, products, it's crazy. So I think that even someone that used to be a founders, 10 years ago, and now what they're working with different technologies, it's crazy how quick it is. So definitely I see that as a trend, and also everyone, not everyone, but another trend that many people mentioning is like a one founder unicorn. So in terms of like how you're able to go very far in what you used to have, you need 20 people in the past. So definitely it's something that I see here, also with founders that are non-technical, being able to develop their first MVP with very little money.
So by the time they need to go and request resources, they have a much greater product. They're able to do more in less time with less people.
Yeah, so they don't need to stop.
So it's a technological. So the reason you're saying this trend is more technological. It isn't, let's say, maybe more cultural. You would say. I would say some people, they want a little more control over their startups. I know there was some like a small in music industry in America. Don't sign with these big. They'll start to control you and too early, and make sure you check the terms. And I feel like there's a little bit of a culture there of kind of like try to own your art, so to speak. And that might like transfer over into the tech in the entrepreneurial world.
So again, probably there are people, founders that are bootstrapping. I don't see here. This is
right.
What you said. This is kind of like a culture. It's more about like getting to a place that, in terms of if it's a valuation, if it's like really raising money in a good stage, that they have build something and not just on a presentation.
What do you think venture capitalists are looking for when they're looking to invest in a tech company? Let's say around their first like large check.
In terms of like really like early stage, because
right, that they got something that they can prove to some extent. I'm asking because related to your last question. I mean, they wait longer. Companies have something more developed often, increasingly as they speak to someone in venture capital. So I was wondering, maybe in the VC world, are they looking for anything that's different? Maybe certain technologies, being able to certain leverage it. Maybe they're leaning more on personalities of the founders than they have on the past. I know many more VCs are hoping that the founder would stay as a CEO longer, even as they scale. That didn't always used to be the case. Sometimes they bring in like more of a management and people with probably a little more business experience, but not, let's say, founder-led. We see that trend changing. So I'm wondering, when a VC is looking to take the chance of being that first real check, are they looking for something different now than, let's say, they did 2 years ago?
I don't think that it's changed a lot. I think that what is changing, the same thing that you ask any VC, it has to be part. One part of his answer will be the team, and I think that now, because technology is changing so quickly, so you can work, on a very specific product, and then, while like after 6 months, it's not relevant because, now the technology became very similar to your solution. So I think that the team need to be strong to be able to, pivot. Pivot is a big word now, but be able to know how to work together. And it's specifically, you see that also in the case that you have, two co-founder that can be like that are strong but also strong together. So I think that this is also something that I think that it's important, and what VCs are looking. So it's not like a matching of two founders that are great individuals, but then when they come together, when there will come a time that they will need to pivot, if they do not know each other so well and do not know how to work with each other, it's can make tension. So I think that individuals that are strong but also know how to work together strongly and know how to be flexible and pivot, because that's, I feel like, something that more and more founders will need to do as things change very quickly. So definitely, if I put one thing, this will be the one thing that I will be looking for.
One of the things that I'm reading about, but I'd like to learn more of. I don't know if you have any exposure to this. A lot of talking about PTSD of a lot of soldiers and a lot of technology that's being revealed and released, or people trying to kind of minimize that. I was wondering if maybe when it comes to mental health, I know that's something Google corporates talked a lot about before. I've heard them prioritize that, as a lot of other large tech enterprises. How do you think mental health plays a part in the tech ecosystem as a founder, and in general? Do you think are we seeing growth there out of the ecosystem since the war?
So definitely, I feel like it's something, one of the programs that we're doing. I'm also leading the digital health program of Google First Startup across EMEA, so including Europe and emerging markets. And we see so many startups coming on the mental health, digital health side. So it's definitely something that it's not just Israel, it's all over. I think that it's post-COVID and loneliness and so many things that are happening, and you see so many different startups, ideas, and there was one in Japan talking about like the loneliness. People,
right?
It's really hard for them to date. So one of the things, in order for them to practice dating, they have this app that you date like a virtual person.
Oh my God.
And then
you
kind of practice that, and then hopefully in the real life it will be easier for you. One thing. Then you come to Israel, and there is different, one of the startup here, it's called Kai AI. They do like agents and specifically this kind of agent that's supporting psychologists. So it's not like they are being the psychologist, it's just an agent that can support therapists in implementing, some of the things that were discussed during the therapy. The other thing is another example that called a startup here called Kimba, and that they help with sleep, how to improve the sleep by using different smells that have been, researched by the Weizmann Institute, and really looking into the data of how to inject a specific smells in the specific, time, in the different, how you call it, like the, if it's a deep sleep or REM sleep, like different stages of the sleep will impact your sleep and go deeper, because when you have PTSD, your sleep is really, really damaged. And as we know, I just read the book. If you didn't read the book, you should read Why We Sleep. That really sleep is kind of like, it's a medicine for so many things in our body. If it's our immune system, if it's our, ability to remember things, and for PTSD, it's really hard for them. So I think that, again, it's something that came up from, a person, a founder that following the army service could not sleep, and he used to experiment with smells, and now he is ready to raise money and working on that. So I think that it's from an app to a physical device to, to what in between. But definitely, I feel like this is what I call AI for good, and really leveraging AI for really improving people's lives. And I'm talking in the millions and tens of millions of people.
That's awesome. So Israel's known for a lot of software. However, usually manufacturing or hardware or physical technologies, these consumer goods, Israel's not well known.
Yeah.
Do you think you were mentioning this product. What was the name of the company?
Kimba.
So Kimba, where you have a physical thing you can smell that can help with your sleep, PTSD, or probably just sleep in
It's
general.
a device connected to the phone, and then he identifies the stage of the sleep, and according to that, injects the smell.
What do you like wearing something on your brain or something? Like
No,
scanning?
just
How's it
with
go?
a
With your
watch.
smartwatch.
It's a
Got it.
watch.
Cool. Do you think we'll be seeing more of the kind of physical, maybe hardware products, consumer goods coming out of Israel? I think one of the things I was reading, how the Israeli army rewarded 1 billion shekel contracts to Elbit to help produce and manufacture, let's say, munitions here, in case we would need it for, God forbid, for war. And so it sounds like maybe I was wondering if there'll be a culture here, maybe in Israel, that moving more back towards a little more manufacturing or more hardware or more things of the sort. Do you think that's something that Israel would be able to maybe not necessarily transition, but expand the technology that we're doing to more consumer goods and more physical products?
So I think that on the physical products, my background is biomedical engineering. I work in medical devices startups. So I think that in medical device, we for a long time were able to manufacture devices. On terms of consumer B2C, because what I told you about Kimba, one of the business model will be B2C. We don't see a lot, and it's more challenging in terms of working with the different distributors and manufacturers and so on and so on. And in terms of, I think that the other thing that we're doing, which is the different chips that happening in terms of the AI chips that happening both on on the Google side, Nvidia, Intel, and so on. So I think that also that Israel is leading with different with the leading development around that, but it's not really like a hardware startup. It's more about the core AI chips.
Mm-hmm. So in short, you don't think we'll get a lot of we won't move so heavy in that
No,
direction.
I think that still, as we all know, we are B2B SaaS, specifically
Right.
cyber. We have some health, fintech, as you saw the kind of the latest data in terms of the startups. But definitely devices and hardware will be on the very
No.
on the no side.
On the no side. Why is that? I always found it so fascinating. I feel like, what
I think that it's with small country you need to scale. It's much easier to scale
in a large nation, right?
An app than a device itself. And probably if you want to have 3 or 4 people that need to the moment that you're working to a device, you also need to have a customer support and so on and so on, and if something is broken, and how do you deal with logistics and so on. So it's much harder to scale this kind of companies.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I hear that. That's definitely a challenge coming out. Israel has a great reputation for its digihealth and our healthcare system.
Yeah.
Somehow we've managed to have government maximize human nature and market incentives and be able to make a pretty damn good system. Is the data available, at least anonymized, for technology companies, in pharma or med tech? Are they able to get access to that, do you know? Given that so much of it is, it's digitized and we have such great data about it.
So I think that, both Maccabi and Clalit, I think that we are, one of the most advanced countries in the way that we collect the data.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there is a lot of regulations and you need to, follow a very strict guidelines and protocols and so on. But there are some companies that, can collaborate with the Sheba Hospital, with Maccabi and so on. And this is why it's really quite amazing that, I have my blood test in the system, almost 30 years ago, and when you look at European countries, they have so little, amount of data, and also very, very hard for startups, even if they go through all the regulatory, protocols, really hard for them to get this data. One of the startup in Germany told me that currently, if you do, let's say, a CT test, and one hospital need to, get access from another hospital, they actually need to send a disk, in a taxi to the other hospital. So it's very, very, old-fashioned. So I think that definitely the way that in Israel, for how long we collect the data and the way we're doing that, it's much more advanced than most places in the world. So it's also like a big opportunity for us to, leverage that for the digital health startups that are being created now.
Yeah.
And I feel like the other thing is that when I told you I came from a medical device background, now you see more and more medical devices, founders shifted to digital health because there is less challenges in terms of getting the needed regulatory approvals of FDA and so on, because you're not doing very intrusive devices and so on. So you need to have much less regulatory approvals. You still need to have, but it's much less than having developing a medical device.
Hopefully that will change. I hear there's going to be a lot of serious deregulation and reform at the FDA with the Trump administration. So that should be optimistic.
Yeah.
When it comes to kind of bring back here to the Google for startups, right? I want to go thing earlier. You were talking about there are 6 of them, 3 in Europe, which was included, which is always the funniest thing to me when we, whether it's sports or whatever, always include Eurovision. It's like, well, what are we doing here? And the 3 in Asia. And you said Israel kind of serves the emerging market, probably geographically, and also there's a lot of going on here, which makes sense. But how does the startups that reside here, how are they different in the culture than, let's say, the Google for startups at your other campuses?
So I think that the ability to move fast, which I think that it's for any startup, but I think that the Israeli startup are much faster.
Why?
Also, they are, what we call it in Hebrew, the chutzpah and the ability to, connect with big customers, even for the initial feedback, or just to be their design partners and so on. I feel like also for Israeli founders, they could go much higher in the rank and get to, the top clients. Which maybe other startup will not have the chutzpah for doing that. But overall, I think part of the Google for Startups community, both in EMEA and globally, is really to connect. And I think that there is, a big advantage of understanding, how different startups are working in different countries, in different verticals, and they also have different investors. So all of that, when we see them coming, a lot of the time we bring them to one place. They found, much more similarities than different things. So it's actually this kind of melting pot of different cultures coming together and working on an early stage startup. A lot of the time, it's very, very similar.
So where do you think Google for Startups here in Israel, how do you think it will change in the coming years? Do you think it will be different in 5 years from now than it was from 5 years ago?
Hopefully we'll just expand. We'll be able to get from 30 startups at one time to 60 startups.
What's stopping you? Is it budget, space?
No, I think that actually that we have a physical space that I feel like the trend now is coming back to the office and not going outside of the office. So I think that more and more people will want to be part of the community. So, but one thing is to expand in terms of just having, for me, the idea is that this place will be all the time full. So not to have, the time in the morning or in the evening. I want, the creation of the next startup all the time happening here. And we have a lot of diversity and diversity and inclusion. So we work with the ultra-Orthodox accelerator that's going to be launched, and we partner. We have
Which one, Migo?
Sorry?
What's the accelerator called?
The Kamatech
Kamatech.
accelerator. We have the domestic violence accelerator, so leveraging the Michal Sela accelerator, that helping, and again, people from tech coming and thinking about different technological solutions to reach zero number of women being murdered. So I think that this is the essence of the ecosystem here. That from one side, people are doing cyber and building unicorns and building crazy stuff, but in the same time, they also have the time to give for things that are non-profit but really have big impact, and some of the solution can be scaled globally. So I think that it's two things that I want them to be, going at the same time. Expand more of underrepresented groups, building and getting the chance to build a startup, and leveraging from amazing mentors that sold their companies and building the third and fourth startup, but also have the time to mentor others from if it's from periphery, if it's underrepresented, and in the same time really getting the strongest founders to start here. Okay, and do the ideation here and meet the other founders here, and really building a very warm community of founders.
Yuval, thank you for hosting us, and thank you for being a guest on IsraelTech.
Thank you. Hopefully it's the first time, so you're all the time invited here.
Be careful. Take advantage. I love your studio.
Be careful.
Thanks, buddy.